Why is it so important for you to support the bank?
It's important because black people need to know that we need black banks. I mean, so many times as black people, we're told, you know, try to be successful, live the American dream, but the reality is it's still really hard for black people to make progress and to be progressive in the United States. As much as we would like to think we've moved forward, we have a lot more progress to make, and I think supporting black banks and black institutions really helps.
Why specifically, you know, bank? What purpose do you think a bank like Carver, for example, or a black bank serves?
Well, I think it's more sensitive. I think it's much more sensitive to the needs of black people. I mean, you know, we're here in New York, so every financial institution in the world has a branch in New York City. And with, you know, so much money on a global level, we live in a global society. You know, the plight of African Americans and black people in the United States probably is a really small percentage of people that bank with some of these large banks here in New York City. And I think black people really need to understand the economic power that we really have. And if we did, we would probably invest more in black banks. And even if we just paid our mortgage and our rent and our bills through a black bank, it gives the black banks more money, more deposits to work with to be able to lend and do more for the community.
They were set up, like my Carver, for example, was set up in 67 years ago. A lot of them, the first one actually was set up way back in the 19th century. Do you think they're still relevant? Do you think there's still a purpose that they need to serve today?
I think any institution in this country that is set up to serve black people is very, very relevant. The problem is black people don't see how important or how relevant they really are. So it's almost kind of like bringing a knife to a gunfight, so to speak. The institutions that have been set up to help black people and move our agenda, if I dare say agenda forward, they're still operating in ways of the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and 60s. So younger people like my son, who's 21, sad to say, probably doesn't see much of a relevance in a black bank or black institutions. You know, they're being raised in a very colorless society, but people like me, Gen X and baby boomers, we still see the need, but the institutions that were set up to serve us are not keeping up with the times, and unfortunately to their own demise.
Do you think in terms of sort of getting a loan or getting credit to just start up a small business or something like that, do you think there's, I mean, is there discrimination from the larger banks? Is it harder? Like, what's the situation now?
I think discrimination is really a strong word. I don't necessarily think it's discrimination per se, but again, on a much more national level, the issues that black people face have been neutralized because we have a black president. And so our president, I like our president, he's an amazing president, I really feel that way. But I also understand that because he's an African American man, many people are saying, look, you got it, you guys are good, you know, you don't need all this stuff, you don't need the NAACP, you don't need the Urban League, you don't need these black banks anymore, when in reality we still do. You know, over the last year or two, we've watched things that have happened around this country. I don't even want to get into the nuances, but we've all seen how there's still situations where people of color are marginalized in the United States. So I do feel strongly that there is a need for black people to get together, have our own banks, have our own communities. But you can see right where Carver Bank is in Harlem. There's a Starbucks, there's all these mass merchants, and Harlem does not look like it did 10 years ago. And to some would say that that's progress, you know, we want integration, but then it's also leaving out the people who are from Harlem and can't afford the rents and things like that. So I'm hoping that Carver and all of the other banks, because there's not that many left in the country, remain sensitive and remain dedicated and committed to helping and serving the people who need them the most.
How is an African American or minority bank different from, say, just one of these large banks, as you said, which are?
I don't work for a bank, so I can't say with any level of specificity how they are different, but as a consumer, I can only hope that when a consumer does go to these banks, that they're a little bit more sensitive. Maybe their credit is not as strong. Maybe they don't have as much liquid assets. Maybe they don't have these things. Maybe they're not equally balanced. Because the reality is black people did not start off even. You know, you can look at, just say for example, 2 students who are enrolling into a college right now, you know, just 2015, they're enrolling into a college. Well, the minority student, the black student, there's a high chance that they did not have the same as maybe somebody white, whose parents that say black people are not that many generations out of slavery. My grandmother, who's 94, she'll be 94, she tells the story how, her mother was a maid and she never saw her mother. So we're only a few generations outside of slavery. And so I think because the rap industry and all these other industries have black people feeling like we've made it, the reality is economically we haven't. And so black banks are very relevant, and I think they'll remain a little bit more sensitive to the needs of the communities that they're actually located in, and hopefully help them out and teach them how to be more financially smart.
And do you think they need to, even the banks themselves need to modernize a little bit more? Because the thing is, at the end of the day, they are facing big competition.
Absolutely.
All of the big banks are in the neighborhoods where, the black banks are based as well. Even sort of the traditional customer base that they might be targeting will prefer going there just because you get more benefits. Do you think that they need to sort of, what do you think they need to do to attract?
They need to do better. I said that this morning when I went in to open the account. I was waiting, for a couple of minutes, and I spoke to one of the representatives, and she said, well, you live in New Jersey, and we're on 125th Street. I said, the only reason I'm really here is because now I can bank through ATM machines. I said, but you need that in your marketing materials. I was with a client of mine at the time in 2010, 5 years ago, who said, Saideh, all black people need to put their money in a bank, in a black bank. And even if we just pay our bills and things like that, it can give the banks more money to be able to lend and do other things with. And I did look into Carver. This is 5 years ago. Now, obviously, there's been an extreme move forward with online banking where you can take a snapshot of your check and things like that. That's been done in the last 5 years. But when I looked 5 years ago, I was like, there's no way I'm opening an account. I can't do online banking. I can't make mobile deposits. And so black banks in general, they need to do a better job at appealing to people such as myself. We're not rich. I'm not a private client banker, but I have a small business. I'm a personal trainer. I'm married, have children who are in school. So I do have some money to put into accounts, but you're not even appealing to us. They have to also seek people who can actually help them and will spread the word and actually use their banks. So it wasn't until I found out that I can make deposits and withdrawals in the online banking that I decided to finally go with Carver.
And how the trend that so many of these banks are closing down has been quite rapid, particularly since the financial crisis. How do you see that?
I would say too. It smacked me around a little bit.
So what do you feel about that? Do you think,
everybody took a hit. These last couple of years, the recession hurt a lot of people. And as I said, I was smacked around a little bit. But it also was very sobering. I'm actually happy it did happen. I know there are a lot of people that are probably going to think I'm nuts for saying that, but it also gave me a different perspective on money. You have to really look. Americans have been very loose with their money and credit, and we'll pay for it later, and racking up all this debt and thinking that the spigot is never going to turn off. When I was affected, I was personally affected, adversely affected when the banks and everything started collapsing. My business at the time totally failed. I had to move out of my beautiful office in Times Square in the city. It was hard. I took a hit. But what it did was it gave me a different position on how to manage money, how to handle money, how to really govern my credit. And I would like to say that I wish Carver, even at the lowest point, had reached out, because we eventually had to turn around. And if they had positioned themselves as the bank to help people get out of this, can you imagine what their deposits would look like now? But that appeal was never there. So what happened when my finances got better, I went to the most convenient bank, the bank that allowed me to open an account online, the bank that allowed me to take mobile deposits with checks. They weren't there. So I'm hoping that they can really see that they have to do the appeal, and I hope people walk away from what happened and they govern themselves better financially.